Oh, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my home. Thank you for joining me today for another Bible story we're going to be reading today. But before we get started, I want to try something a little different. I want you, wherever you are, if you're standing or whether you're sitting, wherever you are, I want you to be really still and really quiet and listen to all the things around you, okay? And we're going to do that to a count of 10. So I'm going to hold up my fingers, and when we get to 10, that'll be it when it's over. But let's just start now. Stand very still, sit in your chair if you're sitting in your chair, and let's be very quiet. Ready? Ready? Here we go now. Really good. Well done, everybody. Well done. Now, when you were very quiet, did you hear anything around your home? Did you hear anything in the silence? Did you hear my dog Zephyr chewing on his bone right next to me? Yeah, that was that noise. Whenever you're quiet, though, it's amazing how you can hear so many things happening, like the clock in your room, maybe, or the doorbell ringing. All those things we hear when we're quiet. Isn't that right? Well, today I want to talk to you about somebody who was really quiet in the Bible. And his name was Elijah. Now, Elijah was a prophet. Now, that's a big word, isn't it? Prophet. So what does prophet mean? Well, prophet means that God and that person talked together. And then that person would go off and talk to other people. So, for example, God would say, Elijah, I want you to go and talk to the people of Israel and tell them this. And Elijah would go off and do that. And God would say to another prophet, I want you to go and tell the king this. And off that prophet would go. So today, we're going to hear about the prophet Elijah. Now, God told Elijah to tell the king that he wasn't doing a very good job. So off Elijah went, and he said to the king, King, you're not doing a very good job. And the king was furious, absolutely furious with Elijah. And he said, Elijah, I'm going to get you. Pretty scary stuff, eh? So Elijah ran out of the king's throne room and ran out into the street and ran down the lane. And he kept running and running and running till he was totally exhausted. He couldn't run another step. So he laid under a tree. And he said, well, I can't outrun the king. Whatever the king has in store for me, I'm ready to accept. So he fell asleep under that tree. And guess what? An angel came and tapped him on the shoulder and said, God has got a plan for you. But to do this plan, you're going to have to travel quite a piece. So you have to eat and you have to drink. And Elijah looked around, and right behind him, where his head was a great big loaf of bread and a huge jug of water. Well, Elijah ate all the bread and drank all the water, and he was so full, guess what happened? He fell asleep. You know, just like at a Thanksgiving dinner, when you eat all that turkey, you just suddenly get so tired. Well, the same thing with Elijah. He fell back asleep. And the angel came again and tapped him on the shoulder and said, Elijah, God has this great plan for you. You're going to travel a long distance. You've got to get strength. So here is some more bread and here is some more water. So Elijah ate the bread and drank the water again. And he was so full of energy. He said, okay, I'm ready. Where am I supposed to go? He said to the angel. The angel said, well, God will direct you. So off he went, and he walked, and he walked, and he walked, and he walked through a valley and came up the other side and followed a mountain, and he came up, and he came to a cave. Imagine that. God was kind of driving him and moving him around up that mountainside till he found just the right cave for Elijah. So Elijah went in, and he said to himself, well, I know this was where God wants me to be, so I'll just wait for God to talk to me. And guess what? There was a huge earthquake The whole mountain where Elijah was staying was shaking like crazy. And you can just imagine rocks tumbling down and all that happening. And Elijah sitting in the cave thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening here? And he said to himself, well, God's going to speak to me now because he's talking to me in this big loud voice of this earthquake. And when the earthquake was over, no, God didn't talk to Elijah. So Elijah went out and thought to himself, well, maybe God wants to talk to me on the outside of the cave. So he walked outside the cave and he looked around, didn't see God, didn't hear God. And then he looked down, and at the bottom of the valley, there was a huge, huge forest fire. It was consuming all the trees in the valley. And Elijah said to himself, that must be God. That's God. I can see God. God's in that big, huge fire. He's going to talk to me now. Nope. God didn't talk to him. Elijah didn't know what to do. And then came a huge wind. I mean, this wind was throwing all kinds of leaves around, and the trees were bending back and forth and back and forth. And Elijah was looking around saying, this is it. God's going to talk to me now. He's going to really talk to me right now. I can see it. He's going to come to me in this wind. Nope, not in the wind. Now, Elijah was really worried. He thought, well, maybe I got things wrong. Maybe I'm not supposed to be in this cave. Maybe I'm not supposed to be on this main mountain. Maybe I'm not supposed to be in this valley. Maybe I've got it wrong. So he sat down and thought to himself, well, I don't know what else to do. And he was quiet. He was quiet. He sat there in silence. He didn't know what to do. So he just sat there. He didn't have anybody to talk to. All the time he was thinking that God was going to speak to him in the earthquake, in the fire, and in the wind, and he didn't. So he just sat there in silence. And it was in the silence that God came to him and spoke to him and told him what to do next. He got it all wrong. He had missed out on the whole fact that God spoke to him in silence. When Elijah was quiet, he heard God speak to him. So what does that mean for you and I? Well, it means at times that our lives are so filled with noise, aren't they? That we miss out on God speaking to us. Now you say, well, John, when can I see God in silence? Well, how about at sunrise, when we see that beautiful sun come up in the morning and it fills the whole area with light? That's God speaking to us. He's saying, have a great day. Or in the silence when the sun goes down and we see all the beautiful colors of the sunset. God's saying, thank you for sharing this day with me. Or it could be when you're walking to school and you see a beautiful tree of all different kinds of colors. God's saying, enjoy the beauty of today. Don't miss out. But if we're always loud and if we're always talking, we'll miss out on these things. So I want you to think about that this week. Think about Elijah, how he thought he was going to hear God in the earthquake and in the fire and in the wind, and he didn't. It was in the silence. And how you and I, maybe when you're riding in the bus to school, you'll look out the window and you'll see a beautiful tree. That's God saying, enjoy the day. So listen, think about that this week. Think about trying to be quiet, trying to be silent. Look around you in silence and think to yourself, and think, God's speaking to me. And how lucky we are that in the sunrises and sunsets and in the colors of the earth, we see our God. Thank you for sharing this time with me today, and we'll see you next week for another story. Bye for now.